You know that idea that life just keeps getting better and better as we get older? What if, for a lot of people, that's just a myth? Today, we're going to dive into what the journey of adulthood really looks like. And spoiler alert, it's a lot more complex and unequal than you might think.
I mean, we hear quotes like this all the time, right? The famous architect Frank Lloyd Wright said, "The longer I live, the more beautiful life becomes." It's this beautiful idea that with age comes wisdom, happiness, and contentment.
But is that the whole story for everyone? The research on our physical, emotional, and social lives, well, it paints a much more complicated and, honestly, a way more fascinating picture. So let's peel back the layers on this thing we call adulthood.
Okay, let's kick things off with a pretty surprising truth about our physical health. You might think we all kind of end up in a similar place as we age, but for many, the gap in well-being actually gets wider.
This all comes down to a really powerful concept called cumulative inequality. The easiest way to think about it is like a snowball effect. Small advantages or disadvantages you have early in life don't just stay small. Nope, they roll downhill, picking up speed and growing into these massive gaps over time. So what this means is that where you start in life, your social position has this incredibly long shadow. Instead of those health inequalities evening out as we get older, they actually get bigger and more obvious. Let's make this real. Take a look at this study that tracked body mass index, or BMI, all the way from age 13 to 31. And yeah, for most people it went up, but the rate of that increase was wildly different depending on the group. For Black women, that line was the steepest by far, which just goes to show how these health gaps can explode during that critical time of emerging adulthood. And look, these different paths aren't just random, not at all. They're a direct result of what we call social determinants of health. Things like your family's income, your exposure to systemic racism and sexism, even just your access to healthy food. All of these things pile up year after year, decade after decade. Okay, so our physical journeys can be pretty unequal. But what about our inner lives? What about our emotions? Does that older and wiser idea actually hold up? Well, the research points to a really surprising paradox. To really get this, we need to talk about something psychologists call emotion regulation. Basically, it's the mental toolkit every single one of us uses, whether we know it or not, to manage our feelings day to day. And this toolkit is huge. It has everything from big strategies, like changing how you think about a problem, that's called reappraisal, to something as simple as just bottling up your feelings, which is known as suppression. We're all using these tools constantly. And here is where the story gets a twist. We just assume older adults are the pros, the absolute masters of handling their emotions. But some research suggests the opposite might be true. They might actually become less flexible in their emotional strategies as they get older. They tend to get stuck in their ways, relying on the same old strategies day in and day out. And get this includes using suppression more often, a tactic that's often tied to lower well-being. So it seems like with age, we don't necessarily get more tools for our toolkit. We just end up using a smaller, more familiar set, for better or worse. So our internal emotional world is, well, it's complicated. But we don't go through adulthood all by ourselves, right? So how do our communities and our cultures help shape the journey? For a really cool example, let's take a look at the Kausalado culture in Indonesia. Their traditions, especially the ones around marriage, are literally designed to weave this incredibly strong social fabric that supports people through their entire lives. And these aren't just some nice-sounding words. They bake values like cooperation and social care right into daily life, which creates this amazing, robust support system. It's such a powerful reminder that our path through adulthood isn't a solo mission. It's deeply communal. So, what's the big picture here? What does all this mean? It means the idea of a single, universal way to go through adulthood is, well, it's a total myth. What the research really shows is a rich tapestry of diverse and, yes, unequal journeys. So let's just bust a couple of these myths right now. The myth that we all age the same. The reality is widening health gaps driven by social inequality. And the myth that we get more emotionally skilled. The reality is we often just get more consistent, which can be good and bad. It totally challenges us to see adulthood in a new light. At the end of the day, what this all shows us is that our journey through life is this constant dance. It's a dance between our inner world, our habits, our emotions, and the outer world of our society, our culture, and the opportunities we're given. So this leaves us with a pretty big question.
knowing that the road through adulthood isn't some straight, simple line, but this complex web of really unequal journeys, how does that change the way we see ourselves? And maybe more importantly, how does it change what we demand from our society to make sure everyone actually has a fair shot to thrive?